Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Watercooler. I'm Pumla Schmidt, also known as Exchange Goddess on the Twitters. And I'm joined by some friends of mine who actually, I think one person I have not met yet in person. But we're here to chit chat about all sorts of stuff, but mainly about Azure and Citrix. So if actually, I think one person I have not met yet in person. But we're here to. We'll just close my other laptop.
There's two of you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna close that. Okay, so if we could just go around the room and everybody introduce themselves, and we can start talking about our topic of the day, which is Azure and Citrix. Steve, since you're on my right-hand corner, go
I'm
ahead.
Steve Greenberg. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. My company is Thin Client Computing. I've specialized in what we now call EUC for decades. Wow, that's a long time. And I'm excited to talk about the Citrix and Microsoft announcement and kind of dive into that. And on the Twitters, I'm known as, surprisingly, at Steve Greenberg, which is good when you sign up early on a service, you get your name. So.
Paul, since you're right below him on my screen.
All right. So I'm Paul Stansel. I am the Director of End User Compute for Presidio. So we're a national consulting company. And I'm a CTP like Steve, so we've known each other a pretty long time, I think. And been working in the end user compute space, specifically with Citrix, for 23 years, I think, now at this point. So a little while.
Yeah, and I'm Patrick Hubbard. You find me on the Twitters at Fervent Geek. I'm one of the head geeks at SolarWinds. And before I turned into a software person, I spent a pretty long career in IT and did a lot of delivery of services over thin client, and then later virtual desktops, and then years after that, infrastructure support, virtual desktop infrastructures. And so I have also been using Citrix for a very long time, and it's a really interesting time now as we sort of untangle apps and desktops. And so, yeah, thanks for having me on today.
I once played a Citrix admin on TV, and I still have nightmares about it. My nightmares are the reoccurring nightmares of the print queue.
I was going to say, it must be print related.
Printing or profiles, yeah.
But that's and you're just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, we actually created an auto IT script that our help desk could run and just like restart it, because we were doing it all the time.
Yeah,
should have used Kicks.
Netstop Spooler, Netstrike. But that's how we feel about Exchange. Like, it's scary, and I don't know.
Oh, come on. Exchange, you never have to reboot an Exchange server.
I've never had to reboot a 365 ever.
Yeah. So this new partnership, I guess some people have asked me, I mean, what's the difference, right? And I look at it as a deepening partnership of what was existing there, but it's even better now. So I guess, what's your take on it, Steve and Paul, since you guys are, actually working with customers and whatnot and implementing these solutions? Like, is this going to change what you guys currently do, or, or is it going to be like just every day, no big deal?
It's one of those things, it's like an onion with many layers, and there's many answers. But the short, straightforward answer is, I think you're right. I think this represents something new and positive, and we'll get some more activity going in the field and in the market. But the story of Citrix and Microsoft, and when they're friends and when they're not, is a long, long, long one. Going back to the very, very beginnings of Citrix, the founder, Ed Ikebuchi, worked at IBM, and he had this idea for a multi-user OS, and he was working with Bill Gates on OS2. He was a key OS2 guy. So from the very beginning, he worked directly with Bill Gates, and they had source code to Microsoft. And it's been everything from frenemies to enemies to they love each other, they're married, divorced, get married again. So in the big picture, it's cyclical, but I think at this point, it's very significant, because it really is both parties making an engineering commitment,
yes,
and as well as a marketing commitment. And it isn't an empty PR, a press release that says, hey, we're friends, buy us. So that's an overview from my point of view. You want to comment on that, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't 1997 anymore, right? When NT4 Terminal Server Edition was released and all the Citrix stock plummeted like 90%, and everybody was ready to throw themselves out of Windows.
Yeah.
There's been a long partnership. I think it was 2002. I was at a Citrix users group in North Carolina, and Mark Templeton was there. And we asked him then, "Oh, do you think that Microsoft is going to buy you, or they're going to put you out of business or whatever?" And Mark said point blank, "Look, when you dance with the 800-pound gorilla, you just got to move where he wants to move." So,
I like that analogy.
Yeah, I mean, 18 years later, that still remains very, very true.
Yeah, that's good.
I think what this is a reassurance to customers in a lot of ways. It's a reassurance to partners as well, from my perspective, that when Microsoft goes into an account, they're not going to say, ditch that Citrix stuff, WVD is perfectly fine. There was some of that going on. And I think this really drives home to the reps on both sides. A, don't badmouth each other, and B, you're going to get paid. So stop trying to be, so product centric and be solution, focused instead.
I'm glad you brought in that piece of it, because the announcement and the partnership specifically calls out that the Microsoft sales teams are engaged and credited or quota, and that there are mechanisms for Microsoft to deliver Citrix licensing. And that part's slightly fuzzy, but it involves marketplace and as well as private offer functionality. So that's at a really, really significant point that sometimes isn't happening in these kinds of announcements, where there's a business case and a business decision that the Microsoft reps engage. And it's in the press release, it's in the text of this. So I think it is deep. It's technical, sales, marketing, and fulfillment. Now, as Citrix partners, Paul and I, but aside from that part of it, it is broad and it is comprehensive and it is technical on top of all that.
Yeah, I'm actually excited to see more innovation with the existing applications, right? Like our M365 stuff, Teams, because Skype for Business in Citrix is a hot mess. I mean, it just is, right? It works and it doesn't. There's just so many extra things you need to do and to get the full functionality. And I'm hoping that with the Teams integration, the experience is going to be better, less of a headache for the administrators. It'll be a somewhat similar experience to someone that is using the desktop client. So, I mean, that's my hope, and I have a feeling that it's probably going to get there. The fact that engineering's on board, and it's a whole. Basically, the whole team is here. We're all in it together, and I think our COVID pandemic time, right? I think this is what really kind of brought everybody and said, you know what, we have an opportunity here to really do good things. Let's jump on it. Let's make this, let's make this partnership even better, because we have great products. Citrix has great stuff. We've got the Netscaler, which I actually really do like the Netscaler.
Best product Citrix ever bought.
And then, Citrix itself, right? Just the ability to be able to access your desktop applications, publishing that. It's just, I hate to say this, but it just always works.
That's right.
I know Windows Terminal Server had something, similar, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't want Jeff Woos or anybody coming after me, But the Citrix side always worked.
Well, I was going to say from my perspective, because I mean, I've been helping customers monitor Citrix environments, and Citrix delivered applications in a variety of different environments and topologies. And I mean, even before virtualization, right? Or what we think of now as modern kind of orchestrated virtualization. And so I have watched I saw this announcement, and I didn't really see it so much as COVID driven, more a natural evolution of that relationship between Citrix and Microsoft, in that the customers who are using Citrix typically have enterprise complexity. They have bespoke applications, if you have custom apps, and a mix of really diverse user communities, or whether their workforce or integration partners or something else. And so Microsoft tends to have a really good understanding of working with customers through that long tail of not customized, but specific use cases. And so for me, I've always seen Citrix used as a solution to, there was always a clear need for it, because it was all, you would say, no, we're going to have a workstation with a decent UI on it, and we'll do it the normal client server way. But there would always be an edge case. Like when I was at American Airlines, it was, hey, we need to put reservation machines, or sort of those in between applications, but in far away locations. Right? And so that process of, it was going to be IBM related, right? And then it was going to be VMware. We're just going to be desktops like anything else. And then it's going to be AWS desktops, and it's going to be whatever. And it keeps coming back to these set of technologies, and enterprises keep using them, because I think they really do need to have something that fits them from a governance, security, performance perspective, and can't just say, oh, we'll just buy something from the cloud that's delivered as a universal service for everybody and customize as best we can. And so it seems that's where we see it. That's where I see our customers using it, is they are using it in really particular ways. And particularly now, they're beginning to deliver individual applications instead of just a traditional desktop. And that is a really exciting change.
The thing about Citrix.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, the thing about Citrix that I always say to my sales team is, people buy Citrix to use Citrix, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of technologies you buy and they sit on the shelf. I mean, we can point to competitors and their license counts and how many licenses they've sold, but look at the install rates. You don't buy Citrix and not use it. It's too expensive for that. So that institutional knowledge then becomes a self-driving force, right? So that Citrix continues to be in the position that they are in the marketplace, because people continue to use Citrix, people continue to support Citrix, and it just sort of becomes a self-perpetuating cycle.
So
also, to the point about Patrick was saying about providing the things that organizations need that may be unique or custom, Citrix, for whatever you can criticize them for 30 years, they've been delivering Windows apps to every conceivable scenario. So good, better, and different, they figured out what people need and what works. And company after company comes in and goes, we can do this space, and they try. And every technology I use, I can assign a year. Oh, this is what Citrix was in 97 or 2002, or no one seems to just have what they have, which I kind of get from what you guys are saying.
So there was a question that was posed this morning on AZ Update. How does this compete, or does it compete with Windows Virtual Desktop? And my response was, it doesn't compete, but it sort of does in a way. It's basically another. I would say it's like another offering, right?
It extends.
Yeah. Because you can use Windows Virtual Desktop natively, but if you're already using Citrix, there's no reason to go to Windows Virtual Desktop. You know what I mean? It's like, continue using what you're using. Now you can just enhance it and extend it to Azure.
And I think too, and Paul can probably speak this better than I do, because I believe he works with a lot of big customers and may have had more exposure. But to the extent that I've looked at WVD and customers have tested it, it's bare bones. So it's really hard, to Patrick's point, to provide the richness that you're used to for enterprise apps with a very basic scenario. Another way to say it and explain it, which really makes it all make sense, is to think of Microsoft as the platform, and as Paul said, Citrix extends it. And then it always makes sense. So when you put a virtual desktop in Azure, you are using WVD, even if you use Citrix. And under the covers, there's some subtleties. There's times where if you're at WVD, plane, you may be using a different control plane, but ultimately you're still using the category WVD, regardless of how you get to it.
So it's just vanilla ice cream without any toppings.
Well, it's a manageability layer, right?
Yes.
We see that with virtualization. There's a number of other tools, and that's where enterprise actually goes to buy software, right? Is it's you can build amazing things if you have a staff, but sooner or later the cost of doing it yourself, taking your phone's platform, or you may have a rich set of services, but then building it into something that's easily manageable gets to be higher than paying for something that is that manageability layer.
Yeah,
I mean,
SolarWinds knows that better than everybody else, right? Of the benefit of that layer, of that extra information, that extra functionality. I just want to make one comment. I don't eat vanilla ice cream very often, but when I do, I always have toppings.
So I mean,
that.
from my point of view, yeah, I mean we've done a fair bit of WVD. You know, we've done installations of WVD literally up to 20,000 seats. That said, every time we do it, it has a paid-for control plane layer, whether that is a Citrix or VMware or Nerdio, which is by far the most popular one we see with WVD. There's always something else. It's not just, I mean, the community tools are great. Don't get me wrong. I love Marcel's tool, and I use it all the time. But for enterprises, there's always something more they need that we need to give them a paid-for tool, and that's okay. I mean, WVD is a great tool. I run a WVD website. It's a fantastic tool and a great way to bring customers into virtual desktops. I mean, COVID saw a rapid expansion of WVD. I think far faster than even Microsoft predicted was going to happen. So, with all that said, Citrix is the control plane for WVD or capacity in Azure, whether it's multi-user Win 10 or not. Just makes sense because you understand it. You know, it's an extension of what you already have, that you're able to understand the concepts of what's happening. Yeah, it's a little different. Sure, if you're using Citrix Cloud, it's, you know, it's not quite the same thing, but all the concepts are same. The parts and pieces are the same for the most part. It's, you know, it's a familiar troubleshooting process and methodology.
Well, Paul, that you made an interesting point there. I really don't know that it's that much the same at all, and that mostly just comes from watching the metrics that are on the back end services and resources that are consumed by the VDI solution, right? And so when you take applications that have been running on desktops, or maybe even running on a hypervisor somewhere on the LAN on a campus, and then you push that out over the internet, you a lot of times discover that application doesn't work at all the way you expected it to.
Right.
Or like, let's say you have a bunch of, a good example of that would be you were going to apply applications like soft phones, maybe to the entire sales team who before were on physical, let's say Cisco phones. Those applications were written to run on a workstation. They were not written to run on a virtual desktop. And just IOPS alone, you discover really quickly.
IOPS is a big one.
Right.
That's correct. Yeah, and I should clarify when I say the same, I mean, if you're a Citrix administrator today on-prem, the overall concepts are the same when you move to the cloud.
Yeah.
It's always about IOPS.
But
IOPS is a big one. It's worth expanding on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say was that those applications don't necessarily work the way you expect. And so the fundamental sort of expectations that you have out of storage performance or bandwidth or memory utilization, right? Multi-tenancy don't necessarily work the same way in a virtual desktop. And so I think I've had a love-hate relationship with virtual desktops for years because I have said, sort of that architect, pro serve, app owner side of me is like, well, we'll just virtualize that. You're like, oh, hey, we're going to open a call center overseas. So we'll just project our financial services application through VDI, and then we can lock it down and apply governance, and it's going to be a piece of cake. And it's been working great for us for 10 years. We won't have any problems.
Oh, yeah.
When you go live with it and you discover this thing doesn't operate at all the way I expected, and you can tune it, but like that manageability layer becomes really important because that's how you were able to affect it universally and provide a really a high level of service expectation to everyone who's interacting with that service.
Yeah, and that service level expectation is actually a really good point, right? I have a love-hate relationship with Citrix Cloud, which is well known. I've presented on stage about my love-hate relationship at Citrix Summit and Synergy with the PMs in the audience, and they weren't happy with me afterwards. But the reality is today, Citrix Cloud runs, if you're in the US, it runs entirely on Azure East as a control plane, for example. I'm not saying Azure East goes down all the time, but it's not like it doesn't go
I'm
down.
not saying anything.
I'm just saying
Someone's over there.
sometimes Azure East may not be available for whatever reason. And when Azure East is not available, Citrix Cloud is not available at the moment. They're working to fix that, and I hope they do really, really soon. But things like that, you know, the unavailability of your control plane are definitely differences, things that you may not plan for or expect to happen, you know, if you're used to your on-prem. Now, everybody will say, well, your on-prem can go down too. Sure, but you can plan for that. I can make a DR scenario where my on-prem never goes down.
I mean, do you always plan for the outages on on-prem? I mean,
no, it's very customer dependent.
So I get that person's point when they say, you know, stuff happens, because I mean, I've been in situations where certain storage, you know, just happens to get hit very, very hard. God, I sound like our president. It gets it pretty bad, right? And maybe it's not Citrix itself, but let's say you have an implementation that somebody does, and it's using shared storage with another really intense application, like, I don't know, like a mail server or something like that. Not to say that I would do something like that, but you know, I've heard of situations where, oh my gosh, this is a stand, it's shared storage, and you know, it can handle all sorts of stuff. Let's throw Citrix, let's throw our desktops. You know what? Let's throw Exchange, or let's throw a SQL database on there. And then one day somebody writes a really intensive query, or you know, there's a bad email thread going around, and next thing you know it, you get these calls. I'm logged into Citrix. I'm at home. But why is it really slow? Or I can't open my email up in Citrix. There's something wrong with email, you know. And then the email team gets no. This isn't an email problem. This is a Citrix problem. So
you want a fun example of that?
Stuff happened.
So the old days with the 2 C7000 chassis plus a NetApp array, which was the Citrix standard, right?
Yes.
NetApp array with a PAM card. So I worked for a company where we might have built 35,000 persistent VDI, so that every time they wanted to patch an app or Windows, the SCCM payload would be rolled out. And guess what didn't handle the SCCM payload very well? The PAM cards on those NetApp arrays.
PAM cards were,
they weren't big enough.
So everything would come to a screeching halt, and everybody's blaming Citrix, and we're sitting there going, Citrix is fine. What are you talking about? So yeah,
I've hit those PAM cards before. You know, those NetApp salespeople. Nothing against my friends that were NetApp salespeople, but did they push those PAM cards?
Well, you know what? That's one of the things that Paul and I and other CTP type level architects deal with all the time. We architect a lot of storage and redundancy and failover, and we're very good at it because we've been burned by this for 20 years. So there is a difference with on-prem. We can provide a lot of nines on-prem, and we're really good at it. And that is still a difference. I don't really know of a cloud service that's really more than like 2-ish, 3-ish nines, like, right? So it's hard to get all the nines, but you know, but it's getting there and it has other advantages.
Steve, nines were expensive, right? Availability.
Yeah.
It's non-linear, right? So do you feel like part of this collaboration is to be able to bring more of a resiliency focus to delivered applications, and sort of, you know, right now you said it's, you know, limited to a single region, but that to get people to think about it that way instead of, well, we're just going to pay for more and more nines?
I do. I think that's where it's going. I think the cloud still needs to mature to more nines, but that's definitely part of the direction. And I think that's why this announcement has such a strong engineering component that it's called out. And when they do that, that's real. I don't know in this case if they're doing it, especially with pandemic, but these kind of arrangements before with Citrix and Microsoft, they're like, you know, people who work for Citrix are in Redmond type of thing. You know, it's source code and it's collaboration and, you know, program teams that are working on the same project. This is the real deal. And I do think it's going for more resilience. I also think it's going more for functionality, because they called out provisioning, you know, provisioning. And that's something you really don't get in WVD as a provisioning engine. So yeah, absolutely. I think performance, reliability, uptime is all part of this. It'll take a little time though. And again, we're all architects. So they're all these tools that you have as Phillips, a flathead screwdriver, pliers. Everything's the right tool for the right job.
And I think the real key to success, and this has always been true with Azure or any of the cloud environments, is power control and power management. With a virtual desktop environment, it is one of the most expensive workloads you can run in the cloud. And if you don't have that rigid power management to deallocate resources when they're not under consumption, then you're going to be paying through the nose for stuff that would be significantly cheaper on-prem. We have had customers move back on-prem because they don't have the discipline to maintain the power control. So,
hey, Paul, at your large
is that something that can be automated? I mean, I've been out of the Citrix world, managing it for a while now, but is that something that can be automated by any chance? I mean, you would think we're in 2020, everything's automated, right? I mean,
yeah, you can. Citrix has tools to do it. The tools
does it work?
They work in the cloud. Yes, they work great.
Okay.
Yeah. But Paul, let me ask you, have any of your large-scale ones taken the reserved instance approach to try to offset that? Does that work out in practice?
So, I mean, not with Azure, which is the majority of what we're talking about today.
Right.
In terms of AWS, we're one of the top 3 Amazon reserved instance partners in the US. But honestly, honestly, that's not part of my business because of Microsoft's licensing constraints when it comes to running desktop OSs on non-Azure public clouds, which is that's a whole different conversation. We do 95% of our cloud business when it comes to EUC on Azure. We do 5% or so on AWS. Reserved instances on the AWS side absolutely do help, for sure. And in some cases are kind of required if you want to run Win 10.
Yeah.
But
But you're not doing it on Azure per se?
It's something we're getting into. It's been sort of a weird business model for a long time. The way Microsoft did it wasn't exactly advantageous to us as a partner, at least.
Okay. I understand.
Are you seeing more migration away from a desktop with a standard set of applications on it, sort of untangling that into CVAs that are individually optimized applications? Is that something that helps manage cost, or is that more, I just have this one app that I want to share with consumers on their mobile device, and that's the approach?
I would say the trend is actually the opposite in our world, because for 20 plus years, we really almost always led, or most people deployed published apps. In the way you're saying, they focused on the apps. And for some reason, as we go from server OS to desktop OS, to real true VDI, not shared server, we're finding that people are going, oh, hell, let's just go all in.
It's the easy button.
Oh, really?
Actually, you're shaking your head, Paul.
Go big or go home, right?
Yeah, I mean, virtual desktop is the easy button when it comes to deployment, right? You don't have to get into so much carving up of every application. And what was it, 4 years ago, Citrix tried to kill ZApp, and everybody raised their arms and said, no, you can't do it. And ZApp is the most popular thing you've ever done. And it's true, except I think that's now changing. I think they were just a little ahead of the point they should have been, because most of what we are doing, not all of it, there are certain industries like healthcare where ZApp is still huge for published applications. And
that's where I came from. I came from 2 different healthcare organizations, and
but we see a lot of just general, the non-healthcare types really is financial, legal, et cetera, just going full desktop out of the gate every time.
Now, having said that, I've been watching changes. And what I think, here's my prediction.
Changes?
My prediction is we're going big, all in on VDI now, because it's a transition. And I think when that settles, people will start to go, hey, wait, I just have this one-off app. Hey, wait, and it'll cycle back in.
I'm going to agree with you there, Steve. It will cycle. You both have been in the industry longer than I have, and I've been seeing the cycle going from one employer to the next. And you're seeing, okay, oh, now we're ripping this out. Oh, wait, we're putting it back in again. Wait, we're ripping it out.
Outsource, insource.
Even one management chain to the next, right? You get a new CIO or whatever, and all of a sudden everything you loved about one product gets ripped out and put in whatever his buddy's selling him that day. So.
Like, oh my God, get rid of VMware. We're going with Hyper-V. And then you start you're like, oh wait, no, get rid of Hyper-V. We're sticking with VMware, and you're like, which one is it?
Now, this points to something that we really have to point out about Azure and Microsoft. It's huge, and it's a huge development, is the multi-user desktop OS and the implications of that and the retooling, because they bought the best of shared server onto the native desktop OS. Little, geeky things going in the weeds, like moving the graphical session management up into user space, things that are very significant so that the Windows 10 multi-user can become the host for VDI, but it also can become everything we used to do with XenApp. And I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to be kind of like, what do I want? Okay, I want published apps, great. I want desktops. And it'll sort of just be once and for all unified, because we, like Paul and us and our peers, we are the masters of making crap work on server.
I think all IT people are. We are the masters. We write the worst scripts with lots of bubble gum and you duct tape to make things work. And you're like, like 2 years later, you look back at it, you're like, oh my God. Like,
but it works.
I think
an application that I couldn't make work.
I think back to like the early 2000s, with Terminal Server and the early MetaFrame days. And I was working in a hospital. I came out of healthcare, right? I remember IT vendors saying, "Oh, that app won't work in Citrix. That won't run on a server." It's like, hold my beer.
We make things work, and then we shoot ourselves in the foot all the time now.
Yeah,
because we always make things work, and then the expectation from upper management is, oh, well, they'll make it work. They'll figure it out. It'll be really cheap too.
As nerds, though, we missed a big lesson as nerds we should have caught, that Scotty on Star Trek always under-promised and over-delivered. Captain, it's going to take 2 days to fix the engines. But I only have 2 minutes. Okay.
But does everyone use Scotty as an expression? I know I've used it for years. I'm like, let's Scotty this at 50%, right? Yeah. So you're just going to automatically build in enough headroom that you don't have to worry about it. But Steve, going back to something you said before about, you are seeing with the pandemic a really rapid adoption.
Yeah.
I think you also hit it when you said, we're the people, IT is the people that get stuff done, that does the impossible. And I'm convinced that one of the things that's happened, and we're hearing that from a lot of folks in our user community, is that the business was almost surprised when they're like, we have to have 100% remote work in 2 weeks. And that's the kind of change that you would never imagine that, IT would be able to do, but we did it. And a lot of times the business is looking at IT and saying, you're miracle workers. And the response is, no, you just gave us really clear guidance, saved the business, and let us push everything out of the way. So is part of that what you're seeing, that what would have been maybe political battles or budget battles about VDI just got pushed out of the way and let it be a technical pursuit and not so much of a budgetary approach?
That's a great point. The barriers were cleared.
Once you remove the barriers in the budget, things work great, don't they?
Works. But there also was a kind of a two-class society. I like Paul used the hold my beer phrase earlier. So people who had invested in virtual desktop and apps and desktop EUC infrastructures, they said, oh my God, the world's on fire. Everybody has to work at home. Those guys went, hold my beer. How many? How many do you want? Because like Pumala said, we made it look easy. Now, the people that didn't invest in that, they were struggling in different ways. They had a whole different set of problems. I saw a lot of buying hundreds and thousands of laptops and setting up a VPN.
Yeah.
And then that's okay, stopgap, but they even had sourcing problems. How do you get that many laptops in a pandemic, right? And then we saw things like they sent the laptop home, they got it there. We need to install more apps.
Mm-hmm. And now you need an RMM infrastructure and
I had a good friend of mine. He was texting me and going, we didn't plan for this. We had no DR plan. We had no business continuity plan. Our IT people are literally freaking out. There's no laptops. I'm just like, you know what? It's a shame that one, you guys didn't didn't have a business continuity plan for this. Everybody should have something in place.
Right.
And I said, two, there are tools and software out there that you really don't need a high-powered laptop. You could, I was like, they're like this thing called Citrix. And he's like, what's that? I'm like, just Google it. And send it to your IT people.
Spell it with a C, not an S.
Because I'm like, not everybody needs to have a laptop. I mean, thin clients. Now, I came from healthcare, so we use thin clients a lot. iGels. I'm
All
very
right.
familiar with iGels.
Yeah.
But most people have
Best thing
computers
clients.
at homes. Most people have iPads at home.
Mhm.
You know, so there are apps out there that you don't need to have something high powered, and you can connect to a specific application that you need it, and you're going to save some money. You know, or I don't want to say hard dollar money, but soft dollars. Your IT
Operational.
staff isn't
Absolutely.
going to be
Yeah.
caught up in building physical machines. Yeah, you're going to spend a little bit of money on licensing and the software for Citrix or other applications that are like it, but you're going to deliver.
And you're also going to centralize that spend
Yes.
at the core.
Right.
Come up
people
with
keep hardware.
uniform cost control.
Yep.
And the less expensive that end device is, the easier it is to at least keep an eye
And
on
the security model is such a win.
Laptops disappear, right?
Yeah.
We had
Disappear. You can't really do much with a thin client, but trust me, I've seen thin clients disappear, and I'm like, they really can't.
You can't use that.
I'll tell you a great
That's how they
story.
disappear. You know.
I'll tell you a great story from many years ago, and then I think Paul wanted to add something. The really strong early thin client vendor was NCD, Network Computing Devices, years and years and years ago.
Yes.
And we had a story. This wasn't our client, but they had this happen to them while we were working with them. They delivered like pallets of thin clients to a warehouse, to be implemented, and half of them went missing. And they obviously were stolen. It was an inside job. Somebody saw a delivery. They took them, and they came back about 48 hours later. They thought they were computers,
Yeah, I mean, we saw customers when in the first days of the lockdowns and all, literally sending people with corporate credit cards to Best Buy to buy out the entire stock of iPads and laptops and just whatever they could get their hands on. I mean, we had a customer call us and ask us for 100,000 iPads. Could we help them facilitate getting 100,000 iPads? No. I mean, the answer is no. At that point, they were about a week too late. A week earlier, we might have been able to get it for them.
Gosh.
Yep. Now, there's an interesting thing. I want to share a story about this because we're talking technical level. And for those of us who have done this, it is a hold my beer moment. But we've also done real work at home programs for a long time, like 15 years, like working with a company where people are screened, trained, sign agreements, their home is set up. We check their endpoint, their lighting, ergonomics. Now we're sending people home. And this is the experience I wanted to share with you guys. I'm getting goosebumps because after all the years of doing this, we're in the midst of a project. This thing kicks in. They're sending people home. They're freaking out. They don't know how to help them. We're on the project. So we're like, okay, we'll jump on. Let's get the people on meetings like this. And we did 12 two-hour-long Q&As with people. And they'd pop on from home and we'd help them. And it was just so moving because one particular moment was a young lady, she looked, maybe early 20s, 22, 23. You see her getting on and the camera comes on and she's sitting in a tiny bedroom with her office chair literally up against a bed working. And I'm like, wow, this is what's happening. Then I talk to people, okay, well, how are you set up? Are you comfortable? Well, I'm on the kitchen table. Okay, is that the only place you have? Yeah, my kids are here, they're out of school, and I'm working from the kitchen table. And there's this whole other set of human family considerations that we never thought about before. If we sent somebody home, it was like a plan. It was often a perk. The highest performing call center people could work at home and blah, blah, blah. And so I just wanted to bring that up because that was really
it's a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a privilege. Now it's the expectation. It's the safe and the right thing to do. If you can implement a work from home scenario, it's the right thing to do for people. You gave me goosebumps there because a lot of my friends and even my sister-in-law, she works from home now, and my brother had to set up an office for her. And it's in the basement, and the basement's old. It's really not finished. And you go down, and it's like this. You have to go through. I want to swear, like it's like a haunted house. You got to walk through. You got to walk through a haunted house first to get back to the back of the basement. And she's got this office set up. It's all dark and it's dingy. I'm sure it has radon, all sorts of stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, Laura. But it's that's life. You know, this is life now. And
Yeah.
but my other sister-in-law can't work from home. She doesn't have that privilege. She doesn't have she's a frontline worker. So she's
Oh,
got
wow.
she works in I guess you call them assisted living, retirement type community.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
she's got to go in every day, and she's like, I'd love to work from home, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you see people, and it's just like, yeah, it's a whole new world, and it's scary for them because they're just kind of like, how do they know I'm getting work done?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's
But
all about results now.
But do you think there's
It's not
also
about the punch card. It's about what are your results. And it
Results.
doesn't matter
Yeah.
when you're working,
Yeah.
because you could be working late at night. Maybe during the day, like I'm telling my sister, maybe you need just to take the morning and do
Yes.
stuff with
To
the
your
kids.
kids. Yeah.
Work at night, because
Right.
it's about results. It's not about how long you work and how often you work. It's about what you're actually getting done. And with Citrix and all you know, all these publishing apps, it's about getting results, right? When you think about, because we're not doesn't matter where you are, you're just able to connect and do your job regardless
Right.
of where you're at, and also time too. You could be anywhere,
well,
and it works.
I was going to ask, you know, part of that for her, and it may be, you know, for virtual desktops in general, is familiarity of the application that you would have been using on-prem, that you would have been using standing at a POC in a store or something else, like being able to, for a brand, for a business to be able to present that to an employee, especially someone who's maybe not super experienced, but give them the same experience that they had, is reassuring in a way. Is it maybe
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
keeps them
Totally.
connected
Yeah.
to something,
Yeah.
especially when they're isolated, right?
It feels like I'm just at the office. Oh, it works just like I'm at the office.
Right.
That familiarity is it's comforting for someone that is in a situation, you know, for the time like right now, right? People are scared, people are anxious,
Mhm.
they're worried about losing their jobs. But when they connect, you know, when they connect to do their work, it's just like they're sitting at the office.
Mhm.
It's comforting, it's reassuring, and I love the fact that Citrix can do that. Regardless of how I feel about the print queue. That is one thing with Citrix. The experience is pretty much the same across, regardless of where you're at. It's
Well,
the
we
same
know
app.
you're old school Citrix if you're complaining about printing.
Hey, we solved audio, so the only thing is left.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it looks like Bobby Jones has joined, but she's muted.
Hello, I am here. How is
Oh, hi,
everybody?
Great. Been having a great talk. It's good to have you on.
Yes, thank you for having me. Nice to see everybody. I know I don't have my camera on. I've got a little commotion in the background here, so I just wanted to hop on though.
It's okay. It's very casual, you know. No
Very
big deal.
casual. By commotion, she means her little grandson who she's watching today.
Yes.
Oh, I love babies. I don't have any babies anymore.
Yeah, the puppy keeps going by, and it's really distracting.
I closed the door, so my puppy is back there going, Mom, close the door, which means I'm not allowed in to sit and
Right.
stare at her while she works. So we were just talking about the Azure and Citrix deepening partnership, Bobby. Do you have any thoughts on this renewed or strengthening position?
You know, I'm more new to it, so I wanted to hop on and find out what it all entailed and what was going on, because I'm very involved more so in the Citrix side of things, and how it was going to integrate, or how the licensing was going to work, and those types of things. So I was more here to kind of learn from you guys and what you're seeing out there, what's happening.
It's like the deep dark
Let
magic.
me ask Paul a question about that, because there wasn't a lot of clarity there. Paul, do you understand what the new ways of Microsoft fulfilling Citrix are exactly?
Exactly, no. But the way I understand it is you will be able to, at some point, purchase through the marketplace the full stack, consumption and Citrix licensing. Now,
That's from my understanding too, that the marketplace is going to be a source of along with your account teams, right?
Yes. Now they've said that purchasing through partners will get a better rate than purchasing through the marketplace. That's going to be a list price thing.
Right.
Certainly, as partners, you know, we don't like to give customers other ways to buy stuff. But they did say that they were going to look at ways to compensate partners for consumption and all purchased through the market. So I think they recognize that it could be seen as a compete with their own partner ecosystem, and hopefully, they're taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen that way. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, so that's delivery. And then Paul brought up an important point we hadn't discussed yet that I think will be of interest to Bobby, is that what Citrix is adding is the ability to have the Azure consumption be a Citrix subscription. Like a single bill if you're doing it all like through Marketplace. But also they talked about in the future potentially doing something like you own CVAD, and now from Citrix you buy the Azure consumption. And that part is, I don't think it happened yet, so I don't know exactly how that is. But it's the idea of adding Azure consumption that you can buy it how you want, from Microsoft or from Citrix. And then from the Microsoft point of view, Citrix licensing will be available from Microsoft as well as consumption. So they're kind of making it like the customer can buy it the way they want.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to get the understanding on how that all comes about, and then how I present it to my customers without falling through the cracks of how we've done it prior, and then knowing what the ability is and how the licensing model is going to work. Because there's so
one
many
thing that would be
things
helpful
out
for
there.
the group too is that Citrix is just now making the final transition to everything will be subscription that you buy from Citrix. Is that October 1, Paul? Is that right?
Yeah, so that is an important point. The license the license changes that Citrix has coming, where perpetual licensing is being discontinued as of the last day of September.
Right. So regardless of these new cloud options and partnerships, you would have to transition to subscription anyway for any net new license.
Yep.
So Bobby already deals with that because we already sell more subscription, but that actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it because that's here anyway. So ultimately, it's all a subscription.
I think that subscription-based licensing is pretty much the future. It's perpetual licensing is, I don't say dead, but it's not.
Thanks, Adobe.
When we think about it, everyone's going subscription. And back in the day, in a former life, I did have a licensing certification for Microsoft. And yeah, I mean, but that was years ago. Almost everything now has a cloud-based service because of, for whatever reason, right? Mostly because it's easy. And now when you have the subscription base, it's just like, okay, what's my bill for this year, right? You don't. No one's counting paper licenses.
It might be from our end easier to manage it that way because prior we were always selling a license, and then whatever changes it would be made, you either had a renewal or, and even a better interest, potentially upgrading them to the new whatever licensing that was out. And this is going to avoid having to go through that. I just know how they're going to work with partners or how we're going to integrate that, because it almost sounds like it would be easier to sell to our customers through doing this with Citrix and Microsoft kind of as a combined thing.
Right.
I believe it's probably, as what Phil says, Paul says it's going that way.
Going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think just simplicity. It just makes things easier. To your point, Bobby, back in the day, right? You had your perpetual license. Here's what you get, but then there's like possibly an update, and then you're like, does this have SA? I just remember having to count licenses and physical licenses and saying, okay, this person's using these features, so they get this license. But wait, this other person is using XYZ, so yeah, maybe they get the one with SA. And then I actually built a licensing database using Access for one of the companies I worked for, and it was so convoluted because we had a mix of volume license, but we also had a mix of actual like in the box paper licenses too.
OEMs and
And you're just like, oh my God. And just
overwhelming.
It is the complexity behind it. subscription, here's what you get.
You get a light bill.
Yeah. Just give me a bill. Give me an invoice. That's all I really need.
Now, you do have different functionality within there. You could have like an E1, an E3,
Yes.
right? But that's still easier because these people have the E3, these people have the E5, right?
Well, and
So
I think
you
it's
have a
much
difference.
easier to upgrade too, because you think of a subscription and they're doing it yearly or month to month or whatnot. But if there is a time for a customer going from, say, an E1 to an E3, that's a lot easier to just transition in a scenario like we're going to versus the old way, right? Where do you wait till that upgrade happens, and then how do you co-term everything? I mean, it becomes very complex even in the co-terming business.
Well, I made the joke before about Adobe, and actually a lot of people don't know that you can actually now buy most SolarWinds products through subscription as well, instead of traditional licensing. But I think for MSP, I think for partners, and really maybe a lot of the partners across the Microsoft ecosystem, isn't that really an opportunity for you to help people, guide them through the transition from perpetual to subscription, but then follow on with right sizing of consumption? Because it's really easy in that first jump to subscription to say, I'm going to buy more than I need, and it's nice to have somebody who's a partner who's helping watch that.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, Paul can comment too, and Bobby can too, that these models are more convenient and they have some benefits. But the general trend is, just so you guys know, is the partner gets less and less. The historical partner consistently makes less on this every year. So yes, the service opportunity and the ability to help is there, but it is challenging models, right?
Yeah, from a product revenue perspective, it's not doing our top line revenue any good. That's about all I can say about that. So, there's certainly a lot of
solution then, right? Because everyone if you're in the business, you got to make
your services. Services is the solution. That's the difference between a partner just reselling product and somebody trying to actually make a practice out of it. Is having
the toppings.
Yeah, there you go. Your toppings.
Yeah, selling cookies and cream, M&Ms, pretzels, or sprinkles, right?
Yeah, and because Paul brought top line, and that's the difference too. Is when you sold perpetuals, it isn't this rigid, but this is the basic idea. You sold this much revenue and you had a margin. With these subscriptions, it's more like you just get the margin. So if your business did X million of dollars a year, it might be half that now.
Yeah.
And to make it a little harder on partners, and the margin is a little less too. So it's not a good or bad thing, but that is a reality of what happens.
So basically, you need to have better sprinkles.
I think it might be easier to stay in front of it though, because you think of like when we were selling Citrix licenses, and then that prior to being any type of subscription, it would come up and the renewals would come up, but then we would have the Citrix callers trying to go in 6 months before that renewal was up and taking that away from us, even though it was supposed to be, we were doing the renewals for our own customers. Right. And we might be able to eliminate that there and get volume this way. Well, but I got to know how it works, because
except you don't
want to stay in front of it.
You don't get renewal anymore anyway, so it doesn't matter.
That's a good point. Either way, you don't get renewal anymore since it's going away. But God, that was been frustrating for years.
We're the masters of, like you were saying earlier, we're the masters of making things work. We're also the masters of the cheese moving. That's how we survived for 22, 23 years doing this. Is you're willing to change your business model and adjust, and I'm sure SolarWinds has been through that.
Everyone has to pivot, right? It's part of life. We're all pivoting now.
I told you what Mark said to me about dealing with Microsoft as a partner. It's the same for us dealing with Citrix, right? They're the 800-pound gorilla in this case, and we're the small fish trying to dance around Citrix. So
everyone has to pivot. I mean, myself, I'm usually on the road, going to conferences. Now streaming. That is my pivot, right? Since I can't be there physically, I'm going to stream so I can see people. People can see me. I also want to see people, so that's why I do these water coolers, because I want to see these faces. And COVID times, like I'm very lonely. I sit in this room and I'm like, no friends.
It's gonna be a big change for you, because you're really I was watching you every day throughout the last year or so, just, I mean, you were everywhere on these tours.
Yes.
I mean, literally, I mean, Europe, all over North America. Where'd you go? Like, tell us some of the.
Johannesburg, all over Europe, Hong Kong. I mean, just
And
a
you
lot
had
of
a
places.
cold all year, as far as I can
I
tell.
pet a lion this year.
So many different continents, and you were in the air all the time. And I was like, you were a trooper.
I got to pet a freaking baby lion.
Wow.
I have a photo of it. Like I'm just like, wow. I had so
like
many.
at the Carol Baskin Zoo?
No, it was in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And let me tell you a story about this place. It's a little safari. And apparently you can have these safaris where you can take your private car and drive through a lion park, okay? And this is like lion park with big lions like Simba with the pride, with his wives, and his little babies. And there's multiple, I guess, prides there. And so you can drive your private car if you want, or you could take the safari truck. Apparently a few years ago, there was a couple from Japan that said, we want to take our private car. And the husband didn't believe that the animals were not drugged. He said that the animals are drugged. That's why they were sleeping all the time. But lions sleep during the day, right? I mean, that's what they do. He didn't believe them. He got out of the car.
I think I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, he got out of the car and he wanted up close further because he's like, yeah, they're all drugged. They're not going to wake up.
This is Westworld. It's fine.
Yeah. The lion woke up. Yes. After the wife saw that the lion woke up and the lion did some things, the wife was like, oh my God, I'm going to help my husband. Yeah.
No.
So the lion had a very healthy lunch.
Oh.
But so apparently you can do that in South Africa. Like you can actually take your car and drive through a safari, like a mini safari, and be with lions. Like that's not possible here. So I like experience that. I'm like, oh my God, like that really. They're like, yeah, that really happened.
We need to get you like a little stuffed baby lion to put by your desk that you can pet.
But I've seen the world, and now with COVID, I'm here. So I bought a new car. I bought a Tesla, and I haven't really driven it anywhere. It just sits in my garage now. And it's like, it's almost really sad because, I bought a Tesla and I can't really go anywhere. Sometimes I drive to Chick-fil-A just so I can take it out. But it's crazy times. And I love doing these water coolers because I get to see people's faces that I normally would see on the road. So, thank you for everyone. Like it really does make my day when I see people. I feel good.
Good.
Thanks.
No lions then. No one's eating anybody here.
And we do a Friday EUC happy hour for anybody in the industry. I'll add you guys to that if you're interested. And I'm not sure I have your email, Patrick, but maybe someone can shoot it to me.
Yep. That, or you can hit me up on the Twitters too.
Okay, cool.
You know what? So I'm a big thing with acronyms. I hate acronyms. And for those that don't know what EUC stands for, it's end user computing.
Yes. Thank you. We take it as a given.
Yeah.
We do. Well, so my company, Microsoft, we are notorious for acronyms. And we need a book. Like I literally need a book to understand what acronyms. And each department and org has their own acronyms for stuff. So I'm just like, stop with the acronyms. Just spell it out, please.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. Anybody have any final thoughts? Because we are, towards the end of our hour of water cooling.
No, I'm pretty good. I think we've covered about everything that we could cover given the time. So thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I appreciate
Thank you.
hopping
Thank
on.
you guys.
If we have another one of these sessions, please include me.
Patrick, I'll make sure I'm following you if I'm not already. Fervent Geek on the Twitter.
Well, and everyone, thanks so much for having me. I mean, I've been a big BDI user for
my goodness.
for years, and I have watched that ebb and flow of Citrix, and I have
Wow.
watched everything come in to say, oh, it's the new Citrix, and the reality is it stays around and it seems to be really useful in a lot of different situations and has sort of proven itself over time. And I do like to root for dependable. So it's been great to hear a little bit more from you guys about what that implementation looks like on the ground, actually getting it to work for customers. And Pooh, I'm looking forward to seeing what this relationship works out with Microsoft.
No, I'm excited for it. I think it's just going to make things better for the customers out there and potential new customers. When there's more options and when both teams are working together full 100%, the products are going to be great. I'm not saying they weren't 100% before, but
Right, but they'll be better.
they're gonna. It's like it just feels like everyone's on the same boat. We're all together and we're all paddling towards that same goal. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think our customers will too. And thank you again for everyone for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
We should have more
Thank
of these.
you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Yes, I was showing for audio only. I was showing everyone the pictures that I took in Johannesburg. So this is the lions.
That's
They were sort of
amazing.
sleeping. They're a little drowsy. But then my team and I, we did take a group photo. And this is the lion that was actually awake.
Oh,
And their hair is very coarse. Like you would think it's soft, but they're coarse. And they were trying to eat one of the guy's shoe because it was lunchtime then.
Oh.
So we quickly got out. Okay, so we are done for today. Have a great weekend, everybody. And thank you again all for joining me. And that is a wrap.
All right.
Thank you. Have a